A young billionaire gave food to two twin sisters on a city street in the middle of winter, and the next day, 3 police cars showed up in front of his mansion. 11:47 p.m. glowed from the dashboard of the Audi RS7 when Ethan Hayes cranked the car's heater for what felt like the 10th time. A brutal cold front had descended on New York, transforming the city into a crystalline, almost alien landscape where flurries of snowflakes swirled in the golden halos of the streetlights. Wall Street, typically a chaotic river of expensive suits and relentless ambition during the day, was now submerged in a profound, sepulchral silence, punctuated only by the distant growl of a lone taxi or the frantic clicking of heels from some late-night analyst rushing toward the subway. Ethan massaged his temples, the familiar dull throb a telltale sign of a day stretched to its breaking point. His final meeting had spiraled far beyond its allotted time, a delicate dance of negotiations with Japanese investors who dissected every clause, every comma, with surgical precision. At 32, as the president of one of the nation's largest private investment banks, he was supposed to be inoculated against this kind of pressure. But some nights carried a heavier weight than others. The face of his father, Richard Hayes, watched from a silver frame on his desk, his expression captured in that characteristic half-smile of judgment. Power and responsibility are two sides of the same coin, son, he used to say, a phrase typically followed by the clinking of ice in his favorite whiskey. Ethan had inherited the bank's presidency before he'd even hit 30, after a massive coronary had abruptly ended his father's reign. Since that day, every moment had been a test, a constant measure of whether he was honoring the Hayes legacy. The snow began to fall with a new intensity, whipping up into small, ghostly white whirlwinds that pirouetted through the air. Ethan eased his foot off the accelerator, a move born more from habit than necessity on the nearly empty streets. It was then that something utterly out of place snagged his attention through the windshield. There, in the heart of Central Park, renowned for its ancient elms and grand sculptures, 2 small shapes huddled on one of the old wooden benches. Initially, they seemed like another piece of the park's winter scenery, perhaps a new, melancholy art installation favored by the city's parks department. But then one of the figures shifted, and Ethan's heart constricted. He slowed the Audi to a crawl, pulling it toward the curb. The sight struck him with the force of a physical blow. They were 2 little girls, identical twins, no older than 4 or 5. They were dressed in flimsy coats, utterly inadequate for the biting, frigid air, and they clung to each other like desperate little sparrows trying to weather a hurricane. "My God," he muttered, hastily parking the car beside the sidewalk. Across the street, in one of the stately brownstones that had resisted the relentless march of modern high-rises, a lace curtain twitched, but Ethan was too fixated on the children to see it. The brutal wind hit him the instant he opened the car door, slicing through his $3,000 Italian wool coat as if it were tissue paper. His dark hair, normally styled with meticulous care, was immediately tossed into disarray by the wind and snow. How could these children possibly survive this cold with such little protection? He approached them cautiously, his tall, formal frame a potential source of fear. "Hello," he said softly, his voice gentle and calm, the same tone he used when visiting the pediatric wing of the hospital his bank sponsored. "Are you 2 all right?" The twins shrank back, seeming to try and meld into a single being, their faces perfect mirrors of fear and deep-seated distrust. But what struck Ethan most profoundly was their communication, not through words, but through a series of swift, almost imperceptible glances, a silent language known only to them. Across the street, Evelyn Hayes adjusted her reading glasses, her gaze locked on the unfolding scene. At 65, after 4 decades as an elementary school teacher, she had cultivated a 6th sense for children in peril. For the past few days, she'd seen the little twins materializing in the park after dusk, but something had stopped her from calling the authorities. Maybe it was the fierce, protective way they held on to each other, or perhaps it was her own deep-seated reluctance to be the one who might separate two souls so clearly intertwined. "It's really cold out here," Ethan continued, maintaining a respectful distance. He saw how the snow was beginning to gather in their dark hair, forming tiny white crowns that melted slowly. "Can I help you? Are you hungry?" At the mention of food, a fleeting spark ignited in the eyes of one of the girls, green, intense, and carrying a sorrow far beyond her years. The other immediately clutched her sister's hand, a gesture that was both a shield and a restraint. Ethan hurried back to his car, his expensive Italian shoes sinking into the snow, already blanketing the sidewalk. On the passenger seat was the sandwich he'd bought hours ago, a nightly ritual for his late workdays. He also grabbed a bottle of mineral water and, most critically, the spare cashmere coat from the back seat. Evelyn Hayes drew closer to her window, her wrinkled fingers twisting the lace curtains her mother had hand-stitched decades ago. In the dim glow from the street, she could see the muted flicker of her television behind her, an old rerun of some cooking competition she wasn't actually watching. Her eyes darted between the small girls and the impeccably dressed man who had just emerged from his luxury car. "Lily," one of the girls whispered to the other, her voice so faint Ethan had to strain to hear it. It was the first word spoken since his arrival. "Grace," the other replied in the same hushed tone, and Ethan knew he was witnessing something profound, a moment of decision between the two of them, a communication that transcended mere words. He moved a bit closer, offering the sandwich like a sacred treaty. The one he thought was Lily reached out a trembling hand, taking the food with a precision that felt practiced, almost rehearsed. They split the sandwich into meticulously equal halves, their tiny fingers working with a surprising dexterity. As he watched them eat, Ethan started to notice the details obscured by the initial shock. Their dark hair was tangled and uneven, as if it hadn't met a comb in weeks. Smudges of dirt streaked their faces, now being washed away by the melting snow to reveal skin that was far too pale. Small cuts and scratches adorned their hands, some healed, others still raw. But it was their eyes that unsettled him most. Those identical deep green eyes seemed to hold too many stories for children so young. They held a mixture of fear and a weary resignation that made his chest tighten. In the brownstone, Evelyn Hayes had retrieved a notepad from her writing desk. With the meticulousness of someone who had spent a lifetime grading homework, she wrote down the Audi's license plate. She also noted the exact time and a brief description of the man, tall, well-dressed, probably in his early 30s. Her years as an educator had taught her to trust her gut, and something about this entire situation felt deeply wrong. "You can't stay out here," Ethan said after the girls had finished eating, watching as they brushed crumbs from their thin coats with identical synchronized movements. "It's too cold. Let me help. I have a big, warm house with food, and—" He stopped mid-sentence, silenced by the instantaneous panic that flashed in their eyes. Grace, or was it Lily, gripped her sister's hand even tighter, her small knuckles turning white with the force of her hold. "I'm not going to hurt you," he promised, feeling an emotion he couldn't quite name, a blend of compassion, concern, and a deeper, almost primal protective instinct. "You can stay together the entire time. I just want to make sure you're safe and warm tonight." The twins exchanged another of those enigmatic glances that seemed to contain whole conversations. The snow was falling harder now, and Ethan could see them shivering violently, their lips taking on a worrying shade of blue. It was Grace who made the decision for them both. In a sudden, decisive move, she stood up, pulling Lily with her. Ethan quickly draped his spare coat over them, a long cashmere overcoat, large enough to envelop them both like an improvised tent. As he led them to the car, he felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders, as heavy as the snow still swirling around him. A part of his mind, the same logical part that made him a formidable banker, screamed that he should be calling the police immediately. But something stronger, perhaps the same instinct that had compelled him to stop in the first place, told him that his first duty was to protect these children. Evelyn Hayes watched the black Audi RS7 disappear into the snowy night, carrying the little twins she had been quietly observing for days. Her wrinkled hands trembled slightly as she typed the car's license plate number into her old cell phone, one of the few technological concessions she allowed herself. The Hayes Mansion was an imposing neoclassical structure in the Hamptons, one of the most exclusive enclaves on the East Coast. As Ethan guided the car through the wrought iron gates and down the long, tree-lined driveway, he noticed the twins stirring in the back, their eyes wide as they absorbed the estate, with a mixture of fear and awe. The house was silent and mostly dark. Mrs. Garcia, the housekeeper who had served the Hayes family for over 2 decades, had left early due to the worsening weather, leaving only a few strategically placed lamps on. Ethan guided the girls inside, marveling at how they moved in perfect synchrony, never more than a few inches apart. In the vast modern kitchen, he improvised as best he could, finding some instant soups in the pantry that Mrs. Garcia kept for emergencies and whipping up hot chocolate, while the twins huddled together on the enormous sofa in the adjacent living room. Their eyes scanned the luxurious surroundings like tiny radar dishes, searching for threats or escape routes. The rich aroma of hot chocolate seemed to breathe a little life into their expressions. They drank slowly, always sharing everything equally, always communicating with those silent glances that seemed to hold entire conversations. Ethan noticed how their small hands trembled around the mugs, as if the simple act of accepting comfort was a terrifying risk. After some silent negotiation, they agreed to take a bath, but only if they could stay together, and only after Ethan showed them that the bathroom had 2 doors they could open if they felt trapped. He left them with clean towels and a couple of his old T-shirts that would serve as makeshift nightgowns, affording them privacy, but remaining close enough to hear if they needed anything. The sound of running water mingled with occasional whispers, the first real conversations he had heard between them, though he couldn't make out the words. There was something deeply moving in their utter dependence on each other, as if they were 2 halves of a single whole. In the main guest room, decorated in soft shades of blue and beige, the twins finally began to show signs of exhaustion. Ethan watched them fall asleep, curled together on one of the king-size beds, looking even smaller and more fragile amidst the expanse of Egyptian cotton sheets. Only then, observing them in the warm glow of a bedside lamp, did he begin to see the most disturbing signs. They had old bruises on their arms, some already a sickly yellow, others still greenish and purple. Their bodies were too small for their apparent age, with ribs visible even through the oversized T-shirts. A series of small scars, some that looked unnervingly like burns, dotted their arms and legs, telling silent stories of neglect or something far worse. In his downstairs office, Ethan poured himself a finger of whiskey, but didn't drink it. The amber liquid simply swirled in the glass as he spent the next few hours toggling between missing children websites and recent news reports of abandonment or abduction. To his surprise and growing concern, he found no record of missing twins matching Lily and Grace's description. His searches led him down a rabbit hole of articles about street children, statistics on child abandonment, and studies about twins. He learned that identical twins often developed private languages and profound connections that science still struggled to fully comprehend. He read about cases of siblings who felt each other's pain, who dreamed the same dreams, who couldn't bear to live apart. The sun was just beginning to paint the horizon in hues of pink and gold when his phone vibrated, making him jump. The wheels of the first police cruiser skidded slightly on the snow, covering the street in front of the Hayes mansion. The black and white car stopped abruptly, its lights flashing a stark red and blue against the imposing facade. Seconds later, a second cruiser appeared from the right, followed immediately by a third from the left. The 3 vehicles formed a makeshift barricade at the property's gates, their sirens slicing through the stillness of the icy morning. Ethan was in the kitchen making pancakes for the twins when the sound of sirens flooded the mansion. He ran to the security monitor and felt his heart nearly stop. 3 police cars completely blocked his driveway, their strobing lights casting frantic dancing shadows on the walls of his office. From the first cruiser, Detective Sarah Walker stepped out, her graying hair pulled into a tight, no-nonsense bun that contrasted with her dark bulletproof vest. From the second car, 2 officers armed with assault rifles emerged. The third vehicle released 3 more officers, who immediately took up tactical positions around the property. "Mr. Hayes," Detective Walker's voice boomed through a megaphone, "this is the police. We have a warrant. Come out with your hands where we can see them." Upstairs, the twins woke in fright at the noise. The sirens triggered a primal terror in their small bodies, and within seconds they had vanished beneath the king-size bed, trembling and clinging to each other in absolute silence. Ethan watched on the monitor as the 3 police cars dominated his driveway, their lights reflecting off the mansion's bulletproof windows. He knew this moment was inevitable. It was impossible to hide 2 children for long, especially for someone of his public stature. "I'm coming out," he yelled into the intercom. "I'm opening the gates." The iron gates began to slide open slowly, revealing the 3 cruisers more clearly. The first, where Walker was leaning, had the number 247 painted on its side. The second showed 315, its officers still holding their rifles at a low ready. The third, marked 429, kept its engine running, poised for action. Walker signaled, and 6 officers advanced in formation along the gravel driveway, which crunched under their boots. 3 kept their weapons ready, while the others scanned the property's surroundings. Ethan opened the main door before they reached the marble steps. He wore dress pants and a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, trying to project an image of non-aggression. Detective Sarah Walker, she introduced herself, her badge gleaming against her vest. "We received an anonymous tip about 2 minors in your residence." "I can explain everything," Ethan replied, keeping his voice steady despite the palpable tension. Through the living room windows, he could still see the 3 cruisers, their lights flashing manically. "I found the girls last night, alone in Central Park. It was snowing. They were freezing." "Hands where we can see them, Mr. Hayes," one of the officers from the second car interrupted, his hand still on the grip of his weapon. Walker coordinated everything through the radio, clipped to her vest. "Unit 247, maintain front position. 315, continue interior sweep. 429, ensure no one escapes out back." Upstairs, the specialized team tried to establish contact with the twins. A female officer knelt near the bed, speaking in a soft, soothing voice. "Lily, Grace, it's all right, sweethearts. No one's going to hurt you." Silence was the only answer. Only the frightened green eyes of the girls were visible in the dim space under the bed, their small bodies so close they seemed to have merged into one. Walker led Ethan to the makeshift interrogation area they'd set up in the mansion's library. Through the window, the lights of the 3 cruisers still flashed, creating a surreal atmosphere amidst the shelves of old books. "Why didn't you call the police immediately, Mr. Hayes?" Walker began, her tone professional but not overtly hostile. "They were terrified," Ethan explained, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "They could barely speak. I had to earn their trust first. If I had called the police right then. Do you realize your actions, however well-intentioned, can be interpreted very seriously?" Walker interrupted. "A single man taking 2 unknown children into his home in the middle of the night." Across the street, Evelyn Hayes watched everything through her lace curtains. The 3 police cars, their lights still reflecting against the falling snow, seemed to confirm she had done the right thing by reporting it. But why did her heart feel so heavy? Her wrinkled hands trembled as she held an old photo album. On its yellowed pages, a young woman smiled, her green eyes identical to the twins. Evelyn closed the album with determination, as if trying to contain the memories threatening to escape. At the mansion, the situation began to shift when one of the social workers made a small breakthrough with the twins. Grace, the braver of the two, reached out a hand to take a piece of chocolate offered to her. It was at that moment that Walker returned to the bedroom. "Mr. Hayes," she called, observing the interaction closely. "The girls seem to trust you, at least a little. That's unusual given the circumstances." Ethan took a step forward, always keeping his hands visible. "Lily, Grace, it's okay. Detective Walker is here to help." To everyone's astonishment, Grace slowly emerged from under the bed, pulling Lily along with her. Their green eyes stayed fixed on Ethan, as if seeking confirmation that everything was truly all right. Walker didn't miss that detail. In 20 years on the force, she had developed a sixth sense for distinguishing criminals from good Samaritans, and something about the interaction between Hayes and the twins didn't fit the typical predator profile. "We need to continue our investigation," she announced after a few hours of observation and preliminary questioning. "But given the special circumstances and the apparent bond between you and the girls, I'll allow them to remain in the house under police supervision." The 3 cruisers stayed parked in front of the Hayes mansion for the rest of the day, their lights now off, but their presence still imposing. Occasionally, a news van drove by slowly, photographers trying to capture images of what the local media was already dubbing the Hayes twins' mystery. That night, after an exhausting day of testimonies and preliminary investigations, Walker watched the twins through the living room's glass wall. They had refused to eat anything that didn't come from Ethan, and now they slept on the couch, still wearing the oversized shirts he had loaned them. "We checked your background," she told Ethan, who was by her side. "You're as clean as a 30-year-old single malt." "What about the girls?" he asked, his worry evident. "Did you find anything?" Walker shook her head. "Nothing yet. It's like they appeared out of nowhere. No missing child report for twin girls matching their description. No DNA in the system." At the brownstone, Evelyn finally made a decision. She picked up the phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. After several rings, an answering machine picked up. "This is the office of social worker Lisa Rodriguez. I'm currently unavailable." Evelyn hung up before leaving a message. Tomorrow. Tomorrow she would tell everything she knew about the twins and their mother. But for now, watching the 3 police cruisers still on guard in front of the Hayes mansion, she decided the girls deserved one more night of peace. Ethan spent the night on the couch next to the twins, under the watchful eye of an officer from Cruiser 315. When Lily had a nightmare, it was his soft voice that calmed her, along with Grace's embracing arms. The Hayes twins' mystery was only beginning, and somewhere in the city, Evelyn Hayes held the key to the entire puzzle, wrestling with her own demons and memories as she decided when to reveal the truth she possessed. Detective Sarah Walker fixed her gaze on her computer screen, rereading the report she had just received for the 3rd time. Her fingers drummed nervously on the desk as the puzzle pieces began to fit together. "Jennifer Miller," she murmured the name, savoring the first solid lead in days of investigation. How did we miss this before? The report was clear. Jennifer Miller, 28 years old, killed in a car accident exactly 1 month ago. The vehicle had skidded on a curve during a storm, rolling over several times before stopping in a ditch. Jennifer died instantly. Her twin daughters, Lily and Grace Miller, age 4, were not in the car at the time of the accident. Walker picked up the phone, her hand slightly shaking with the urgency of the discovery. "I need all the files on the Miller case. Yes, last month's accident, and locate the social worker assigned to the children." At the Hayes mansion, Ethan watched the twins playing in the sunroom under the constant supervision of 2 police officers. Over the past few days, Lily and Grace had begun to open up slightly, though they still mostly communicated through their silent glances. The doorbell rang, and Ethan already knew who it was before he even opened the door. Walker entered with a thick folder under her arm, her face more serious than usual. "We found out who they are," she announced without preamble. The next few hours were a whirlwind of revelations. Walker spread photographs and documents across the library table. In one photo, a young dark-haired woman with green eyes smiled for the camera, holding 2 newborn babies. Jennifer Miller, Walker explained, watching Ethan's reaction carefully. Single mother, worked as a music teacher. Died in a car crash a month ago. Ethan felt a tightness in his chest as he looked at the photograph. There was something familiar about her face, something he couldn't quite define. The girls were in a temporary shelter, Walker continued. They ran away 2 weeks ago. No one could find them until now. Across the street, Evelyn Hayes watched the movements at the mansion through her window. She saw Walker arrive with the folder she knew contained the truth about Jennifer. Her wrinkled hands gripped the belt of her robe as memories flooded her mind. Jennifer had been more than a neighbor. She was almost a daughter. Evelyn had watched her grow from a rebellious teenager into a devoted young mother. She remembered the day Jennifer appeared on her doorstep, pregnant and scared, needing a shoulder to cry on. "So you have to tell him," Jennifer had said that distant night, gently touching her visibly pregnant belly. "He has the right to know." But Evelyn had kept her promise to keep the secret, even after the twins were born, even after Jennifer left. Now, watching Ethan through her window, she wondered if she had made the right choice. In the mansion's library, Walker continued her account. The shelter reported that the girls refused to be separated. When staff tried to place them in different rooms, they had a panic attack so severe they needed medical intervention. Ethan thought about the nights the twins woke up screaming for Mommy. Now it all made sense. "Did they see the accident?" he asked, dreading the answer. Walker shook her head. "No, they were at school when it happened, but since then it's as if they shut themselves off in their own little world." In the sunroom, Lily and Grace had stopped playing, as if sensing something important was happening. They clung to each other, their green eyes, the same green as Jennifer's, fixed on the library door. "What happens now?" Ethan asked, a sudden fear gripping him. The idea of losing the girls after everything they had been through together was unbearable. "Technically, they should return to the system," Walker said, her professional tone masking obvious sympathy. "But given the trauma they've suffered and the unusual bond they seem to have with you." Evelyn Hayes watched as Walker left the mansion hours later. She took out her old photo album, flipping through it until she found one specific image. Jennifer at 16, seated at the piano in the Miller house. The resemblance to the twins was striking. That night, Ethan sat with the girls in their makeshift bed in the guest room. Lily held one of the teddy bears he had bought, while Grace absent-mindedly twirled a lock of her own hair, a gesture so reminiscent of their mother in the photos that it almost hurt. "You miss her, don't you?" he asked softly. It was the first time the twins cried in front of him, not hysterical tears of fear or nightmares, but silent tears of a grief too profound for children so young to fully understand. Ethan wrapped them in his arms, feeling their small bodies shake with stifled sobs. "It's okay," he whispered. "It's okay to cry." Back at her desk in the precinct, Walker continued her investigation. Something about the story still didn't quite add up. Why had the twins run away specifically to this area of the city? Why, among all the people who might have helped them, had fate brought them to Ethan Hayes? Evelyn Hayes remained at her window, the weight of the secret she carried growing heavier by the day. On her desk lay a sealed envelope containing a letter Jennifer had left, to be delivered only if something happened to her. "Not yet," Evelyn muttered, watching the lights in the Hayes mansion. "It's not time yet." Ethan spent the night researching Jennifer Miller on his laptop. He found articles about piano recitals she had performed, photos of graduations, small mentions in local newspapers. In every image, that persistent sense of familiarity haunted him. The twins slept curled up together, as always, but something had changed. It was as if part of the burden had been lifted from their small shoulders, the burden of the secret of who they were, of their mother, of their past. Walker closed the last file on the case, but one question still bothered her. On the twins' birth certificate, the father field was blank. Jennifer had never revealed the man's identity, not even to her best friend, Evelyn Hayes. The Hayes twins' mystery was far from solved, and as the snow continued falling over the city, 3 people lay awake, each holding a different piece of the truth. Ethan with his unanswered questions, Walker with her growing suspicions, and Evelyn with her secret that could change everything. In the guest room, Lily and Grace slept the innocent sleep of children, oblivious to the revelations and mysteries surrounding them. In their dreams, perhaps Jennifer's smile still shone, her green eyes full of a love that not even death could erase. Ethan couldn't sleep. The name Miller echoed in his mind like a familiar song whose lyrics he couldn't quite recall. It was 2 a.m. when he decided to go down to his father's office, a room he seldom visited since taking over the bank's presidency. The office remained exactly as Richard Hayes had left it, the same leather-bound books on mahogany shelves, the same Persian rug beneath the heavy desk, the same faint smell of tobacco ingrained in the wood. Ethan turned on the bronze desk lamp, and shadows danced across the dark green wallpaper. "There has to be something here," he muttered to himself, opening the first drawer of the desk. His father had been methodical to the point of obsession. He kept records of everything, from dry cleaning receipts to trivial correspondence. In the silent mansion, only the ticking of the grandfather clock and the occasional creak of the hardwood floor broke the stillness. Upstairs, the twins slept in their makeshift bed, now surrounded by stuffed animals and children's books, small comforts Ethan had provided in recent days. The third drawer revealed a series of folders organized by year. Ethan began leafing through them methodically, his tired eyes scanning dates and names. Then a photograph slipped from between the pages of an old contract. His heart nearly stopped. The image showed the Hayes mansion during a Christmas party, likely in the early 90s. Garlands and lights decorated the main staircase, and staff posed smiling for the camera. In the center, a middle-aged woman wearing a housekeeper's uniform stood out, not because of her position, but because of her clearly visible pregnancy. Ethan turned the photo over. On the back, in elegant handwriting, it read, "Christmas Party, 1995. Hayes Mansion Staff. Mary Miller, Head Housekeeper, Miller." His hands trembled as he looked for more photographs. He soon found others. Mary supervising the garden decorations, Mary organizing a summer luncheon, Mary always present, always close to the Hayes family. In some older images, she appeared alongside Richard Hayes, discussing what looked like to-do lists or menus. "How did I never know about her?" Ethan whispered to the empty office. He had only been 3 years old in 1995, and his memories of the mansion at that time were fragmentary, more sensations than clear images. He continued his search with renewed urgency. At the bottom of a drawer, he found a metal box with a lock. The key, knowing his father, should be nearby. He smiled, reaching into the false bottom of the first drawer, another one of Richard Hayes's methodical habits. Inside the box, he found a folder marked simply Miller. His heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst from his chest. The first page was an employment contract. Employment agreement, Mary Miller. Position, Head Housekeeper. Start date, January 15th, 1980. Ethan did a quick mental calculation. Mary had worked in the mansion for 15 years, leaving only in 1995, the year she was pregnant in that Christmas photo, the year Jennifer would have been conceived. The implications of that discovery hit him like a punch in the gut. He recalled Jennifer's face in the photos Walker had shown him, that nagging sense of familiarity, the same green eyes now visible in Lily and Grace. A soft noise made him look up. Grace stood at the door, her little bare feet silent on the rug. "Can't sleep?" Ethan asked gently. Grace shook her head, walking closer with curiosity. Her eyes, Jennifer's eyes, Mary's eyes, scanning the photographs scattered on the desk. "Grandma," she said suddenly, pointing to one of the photos of Mary. Ethan felt his world spin. It was the first time Grace had spontaneously spoken about family. "You knew your Grandma Mary?" Grace nodded, picking up the photo with almost reverent care. Seconds later, Lily appeared in the doorway, just as always. One twin never stayed away from the other for long. "Mommy used to show pictures," Lily explained in a quiet voice, joining her sister, "of Grandma in the big house." This house. "This house?" Ethan asked, his heart racing even faster. The twins nodded in unison. Lily picked up another photograph, this one showing Mary with Richard Hayes at what looked like a summer party. "Grandma and the serious man," Grace commented. Ethan looked at the photo with new eyes. His father, always so austere and formal, wore a faint smile while pointing to something on a list Mary held. There was an intimacy in the scene he had never noticed before. The girls settled naturally in his lap as he continued examining documents. He found extra payment receipts, invoices for expensive gifts, even a deed to a house in the city suburbs in Mary Miller's name. "Did your mother talk about Grandma Mary?" he asked gently. "Mommy was sad," Lily answered, fiddling with the hem of the oversized T-shirt she wore as pajamas. "She said Grandma went to heaven when she was little. Just like Mommy now," Grace added. Ethan hugged the girls more tightly, feeling their small bodies relax against him. It was astonishing how in just a few days they had gone from absolute terror to this level of trust. He continued going through the documents, now with the twins fast asleep in his lap. He discovered that Mary had received a generous pension after leaving her job, far above the normal amount for a domestic worker. He also found letters, several of them, kept in a yellowed envelope. He was about to open the first one when a movement at the window caught his attention. Across the street in the brownstone, a light had turned on. For a moment, he clearly saw the face of an elderly woman watching the mansion. Evelyn Hayes, the mysterious neighbor who had made the anonymous report. What role did she play in all this? Why was she watching the mansion so intently? And why, even after discovering the twins were safe, did she continue her silent vigil? Hours passed as Ethan delved deeper into the past. Mary Miller had been more than just a housekeeper. She practically ran the mansion, having direct access to Richard Hayes and participating in decisions far beyond her normal duties. In one of the letters, dated December 1995, Mary wrote, "Dear Richard, I can't go on like this. What's growing inside me is bigger than both of us. You have your family, your reputation, your legacy. I have to protect mine. Always yours, Mary." Ethan reread the letter several times, the implications making his stomach turn. The dates, the photographs, the generous pension, the expensive gifts. It all pointed to a conclusion he barely dared to consider. The sun was beginning to rise when he finally mastered the courage to open the last document in the box. It was a DNA test, never completed, with samples identified only by initials, R.H. and J.M. Richard Hayes and Jennifer Miller. The twins stirred in his lap, waking up to the first rays of sunlight entering the office window. Ethan looked at their sleepy faces, the same delicate features he had seen in photos of Mary, the same green eyes he now realized were a hallmark of both the Millers and the Hayeses. Lily stretched, seeming perfectly at home in a place that just days earlier had terrified her. Grace, still sleepy, pointed to one of the photos of Mary. "Can we keep one?" she asked timidly. "Of course you can," Ethan replied, his voice thick with emotion. "This is your house now." The girls smiled, one of those rare, precious smiles he was learning to treasure. There was no longer any doubt in their gaze, only a growing trust that made Ethan's heart ache in a strangely good way. Across the street, Evelyn Hayes watched the sunrise, her old photo album open in her lap. On one of its pages, a young Mary Miller beamed, pregnant and radiant, next to her teenage daughter, Jennifer. The secret Evelyn had guarded for so many years was about to come to light. In the mansion, Ethan carefully stored the documents, except for the photos the twins had chosen. As he watched them ascend the stairs, hand in hand, talking in their private language of half-smiles and knowing looks, a certainty formed in his heart. No matter what those documents revealed, no matter what secrets the past still held, Lily and Grace were his family now, and he would do anything to protect them. The doorbell echoed through the Hayes mansion on a particularly cold winter morning. Ethan, who was helping the twins with their breakfast, felt a chill run down his spine when he saw through the security monitor a middle-aged woman with brown hair tied in a severe bun, carrying an official-looking folder. "Good morning. I'm Lisa Rodriguez from Child Protective Services." She introduced herself as soon as Ethan opened the door. Her tone was professional, but her brown eyes scanned every detail of her surroundings. "I'm here to discuss the Miller twins situation." Ethan felt his stomach drop. He knew this moment would come, but not so soon. "Please come in. But I should warn you, the girls are extremely wary of strangers." In the kitchen, Lily and Grace stopped eating their pancakes the moment they heard the unfamiliar voice. Their green eyes met in one of those silent dialogues only they understood. Before Ethan could say anything, they were gone. "Does that happen often?" Lisa Rodriguez asked, noting the abandoned plates on the table. "They're making progress," Ethan explained, his voice calm despite his growing nervousness. "A week ago, they barely spoke. Now they talk to me, they play, they even smile sometimes." Rodriguez took a notepad from her folder. "Mr. Hayes, I need to be clear. The current situation is highly irregular. 2 minors under the unofficial care of a single man with no proven family ties." "About that," Ethan interrupted, "I found some documents that might indicate a family connection. Mary Miller, the girl's grandmother, worked here at the mansion for 15 years. The social worker raised an eyebrow. "Interesting, but irrelevant to the immediate legal status. I've come to take the twins back into the foster system." The panic Ethan felt must have shown on his face because Rodriguez softened her tone slightly. "I understand you've grown attached to them, Mr. Hayes, but there are procedures that must be followed." "Please," Ethan pleaded, "at least let me show you how well they're doing here, how they've improved." Rodriguez checked her watch. "You have 15 minutes." Ethan led her through the mansion's first floor, showing the spaces the twins had begun to claim. The living room now had a basket of toys in one corner, the library had gained a low shelf of children's books, and the kitchen displayed colorful drawings taped to the refrigerator. "Lily," he called softly. "Grace." "It's okay, sweethearts. You can come out." A slight movement behind the curtains in the music room caught Rodriguez's attention. The twins were hiding there, huddled together as always, their green eyes watching the social worker with a mix of fear and distrust. "Hello, girls," Rodriguez tried, her professional voice masking years of experience with traumatized children. "I'm Lisa. I came to see how you're doing." The twins drew closer together, their small bodies practically merging. Ethan took a step toward them, and something extraordinary happened. Instead of recoiling as they did with any other adult, the girls reached out their hands to him. Rodriguez watched closely as Ethan knelt by the curtains, keeping a respectful distance. "It's all right," he whispered. "No one will hurt you, I promise." Grace, the braver twin, was the first to emerge, pulling Lily along. Their tiny hands clung to Ethan's shirt as though he were an anchor in a storm. "They only trust him," an elderly voice commented from the doorway. Rodriguez turned to see Detective Walker, who had just arrived. The veteran officer had continued monitoring the case even after the initial discoveries about the girls' identities. "Sarah," Rodriguez greeted. "I didn't know you were still involved." "There's something special here," Walker replied, her experienced eyes assessing the scene. "In 20 years on the force, I've never seen traumatized children recover so quickly." The twins, still clinging to Ethan, watched the adults' conversation with obvious apprehension. Lily began trembling slightly, and Grace immediately hugged her more tightly. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Ethan spoke, his voice firm despite the fear he felt. "I know this situation is irregular. I know there are procedures, but look at them. Do you really think yanking these children out of yet another place where they feel safe is the best solution?" Rodriguez consulted her notes. The shelter report said they refused to eat, wouldn't sleep, and panicked if someone tried to separate them. "And now," Walker interjected, "look at the fridge, the drawings. See how they move around the house, how they don't hide all the time." As if to confirm Walker's words, Grace whispered something in Lily's ear, who nodded timidly. They walked hand in hand to the toy basket, where Grace pulled out a drawing. "For you," she said softly, extending the paper to Rodriguez. The social worker took the drawing carefully. It showed the mansion with 5 figures in front, 2 small ones holding hands, obviously the twins, a taller figure representing Ethan, and 2 figures in the sky, labeled in childish handwriting as Mommy and Grandma. Rodriguez felt her professional resolve waver. In 15 years of social work, she had learned to identify when children genuinely felt safe. "Mr. Hayes," she finally said, "what exactly are you proposing?" "Temporary custody," he replied without hesitation. "I've already contacted specialized lawyers. I can provide whatever is necessary: psychological evaluations, home adjustments, educational support." "It's not that simple," Rodriguez argued, though her tone was less harsh now. "There are strict requirements for temporary custody, especially in complex cases like this." Across the street, Evelyn Hayes watched the scene through her lace curtains. She recognized Rodriguez immediately. They had worked together years ago, back when Evelyn was still teaching. Her wrinkled fingers tightened around her robe's belt as she saw the twins gravitating closer to Ethan. "I can set some conditions," Rodriguez continued after a long pause. "Weekly visits, mandatory therapy for the girls, regular evaluations of the home environment." "I accept all conditions," Ethan responded without hesitation. "Whatever it takes to keep them safe and well cared for." Walker, who had been quietly observing, noticed how the twins visibly relaxed upon realizing they wouldn't be taken away. It was yet another confirmation of her police instincts. There was something special in the connection between Hayes and the girls. Rodriguez spent the next hour listing her requirements: a suitable bedroom for the twins, though they could share, given their unique situation, a structured routine, regular medical checkups, weekly psychological evaluations, and detailed reports on their progress. "And we need to investigate more thoroughly this supposed family connection," she added, jotting notes in her pad. "If there really is a link to the Hayes family, it could simplify the legal process." Ethan nodded, thinking of the documents he had discovered the night before. But that was a revelation for another moment. His priority now was ensuring the twins could stay. "One more thing," Rodriguez said, her tone softening further as she saw Lily discreetly yawning in Ethan's arms. "You'll need help. You can't do this alone, no matter how good your intentions. I can hire a housekeeper, private tutors, anything necessary," Ethan offered immediately. "It's not just that," Rodriguez explained. "These girls lost their mother only a month ago. They need an emotional support network, not just logistics." Almost on cue, Grace reached out and gently touched Ethan's face, a gesture so full of trust and affection that even the seasoned social worker felt her eyes fill with tears. "I'll prepare the preliminary documents," Rodriguez announced, putting away her notepad. "But let me be clear, this is a temporary arrangement. Any sign the girls aren't receiving proper care?" "I fully understand," Ethan interrupted. "And I appreciate the chance." Walker walked Rodriguez out to her car. The two professionals exchanged a significant look. Both had seen enough cases to know when something was genuine. "Keep an eye on them," Rodriguez asked the detective. "My gut says we made the right decision, but we have to be sure," Walker completed. "Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere until all the mysteries of this house are resolved." Back in the mansion, Ethan helped the twins finish their now-cold breakfast pancakes. Lily and Grace ate with more appetite than they had shown in days, as if a burden had been lifted from their small shoulders. Evelyn Hayes watched Rodriguez's car drive away, silent tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. In her lap, the envelope containing the truth about Jennifer and the twins felt heavier than ever. But seeing how the girls were finally making progress, how they seemed to have found some peace, she decided her secret could wait a little longer. Ethan spent the rest of the day on the phone with his lawyers, officially starting the process for temporary custody. Between calls, he noticed how the twins were becoming more relaxed, playing with their teddy bears on the living room rug, occasionally glancing his way as if to confirm he was still there. That night, when he tucked them into bed, now decorated with princess sheets and a growing collection of plushies, Grace held his hand a moment longer than usual. "You promised," she said simply. "Promised what, sweetie?" Ethan asked gently. "That nobody would hurt us," Lily answered, her small voice firm. "That we could stay." Ethan felt his heart swell with emotion. "And I'll keep that promise," he assured them, adjusting the blanket over both. "You're safe here. This is your home now." The twins smiled, that rare, precious smile he was learning to treasure more each day. And as he watched them drift off to sleep, Ethan silently promised Jennifer, wherever she might be, that her daughters would be loved, protected, and happy. In her city office, Rodriguez drafted her preliminary report on the case. Her words were carefully chosen, balancing the necessary professionalism with the undeniable reality she had witnessed. Despite the severe recent trauma, Lily and Grace Miller show positive signs of recovery in their current environment. The bond developed with Mr. Ethan Hayes, while unconventional, provides tangible emotional benefits for their development. I strongly recommend continuing the current arrangement under regular supervision. Walker, at her desk in the precinct, made her own notes. Something about the Miller family history still intrigued her, and she had a hunch that Ethan's discoveries about Mary were just the tip of a much larger iceberg. The Hayes twins mystery, as the local media insisted on calling it, was far from over. But that night, at least, 2 little girls slept safely. A man discovered the true meaning of family, and an elderly neighbor held a secret that, when revealed, would change everything. Outside, snow continued to fall softly over the city, covering everything in a white mantle, as if trying to smooth out the edges of the past and give everyone a new start. Jack Lee's office was on the 20th floor of a commercial building downtown. Ethan watched the private investigator read the documents he had brought, each page turned with the meticulous care of experienced fingers. "Fascinating," Lee murmured, adjusting his thin-rimmed glasses. 15 years of meticulously kept records. Your father was a very detailed man. Ethan nodded, thinking of the twins he had left at home under the care of the new housekeeper. "I need to know everything about Mary Miller and her daughter, Jennifer. Every detail, every connection to my family." Lee organized the documents into neat piles. "The payments are the most intriguing. Not just a normal housekeeper's salary, but regular transfers to an offshore account." They started in 1995, exactly when Mary left the mansion. Ethan felt his stomach churn. 1995, the year Mary was pregnant in the Christmas photo, the year Jennifer would have been conceived. "I want a full investigation," he said, his voice unwavering. "School records, medical history, property deeds, bank accounts, everything." "That might raise some red flags," Lee cautioned, "especially now that you're seeking temporary custody of the twins." "That's why I hired the best," Ethan replied. "I need absolute discretion." Back at the mansion, he found Lisa Rodriguez conducting her weekly evaluation. The twins were playing in the sunroom, more at ease than he had ever seen them. Lily was drawing while Grace stacked colorful blocks. "They're making extraordinary progress," Rodriguez noted, writing in her clipboard. "Their child psychologist reports significant improvements in verbal communication." Ethan observed how the twins occasionally exchanged glances and smiles, their silent language still there, but no longer their only means of expression. "Lily asked to paint the bedroom lilac yesterday," he said, unable to hide his pride. "It's the first time she's expressed such a clear preference." Rodriguez smiled. "That's excellent. Establishing a sense of belonging is crucial for traumatized children." That night, after putting the twins to bed, Ethan returned to his father's office. Lee's words about the offshore payments troubled him. He opened his laptop and started reviewing old bank records, a perk of being the president. His phone vibrated, a message from Lee. "I found something. Mary Miller's hospital records, 1995. You need to see this." Ethan barely slept that night. When dawn broke, he was already back at Lee's office, his hands trembling slightly as he took the documents. "Complications during pregnancy," Lee explained, pointing to a medical report. "Mary was admitted to Central Hospital in October 1995. Guess who paid all the bills?" "My father," Ethan said, though it wasn't really a question. "Through a corporate account at the bank. Well hidden, but the trail is there." Meanwhile, at the mansion, Lily and Grace explored their newly painted lilac bedroom. The change in their behavior was remarkable. From terrified children who hid from everyone, they had transformed into distinct little personalities, still deeply connected, but each beginning to flourish on her own. "Look!" Grace exclaimed, finding an old box in the back of the built-in closet. Ethan, who had just returned, watched as the girls opened the box with childlike curiosity. Inside were more old photographs, some he had never seen before. "Is this Grandma Mary?" Lily asked, holding up a yellowed picture. Ethan took the photo carefully. It showed a much younger Mary, probably in the early 80s, smiling beside Richard Hayes in a picnic setting. There was an intimacy in the image that made his heart ache. Mr. Hayes, the new housekeeper, called from the door. "Investigator Lee is on the phone. He says it's urgent." "In the library," Ethan answered with apprehension. "What did you find?" "I uncovered the records of a house," Lee said, "bought by your father in 1995, put in Mary's name. But the most interesting part is Jennifer's school records." Ethan gripped the phone tighter. "What about them?" "All her tuition was paid through an educational foundation controlled by the Hayeses. From preschool through her music conservatory. Your father funded her entire education, always through intermediaries." Ethan's head was spinning. Each discovery confirmed his suspicions, but also raised new questions. Lisa Rodriguez arrived for another evaluation, finding the twins playing school, Lily as the teacher, Grace as the attentive student. "Their transformation is remarkable," Rodriguez commented, watching the girls' carefree laughter, something unthinkable a few weeks ago. "But I notice you seem worried, Mr. Hayes." Ethan hesitated. Rodriguez had become an important ally, but how much could he reveal? "I'm investigating their past," he finally admitted. "There are connections to my family I need to understand." Rodriguez frowned. "Be careful. The girls have just found stability. A revelation too big or too sudden could upset that balance." As if to illustrate her point, Lily ran to Ethan at that moment, holding up a drawing. "Look, this is our family." The drawing depicted the mansion with several figures, the twins, Ethan, and in the sky, Jennifer and Mary. But there was also a more distant figure, a man in a suit, whom Lily had labeled Grandpa. "Who's this, sweetie?" Ethan asked softly. The man in the photos, Grace answered for her sister, the one who was always with Grandma Mary. Rodriguez observed with professional interest. "Children often process family connections through art," she remarked, "even connections they don't fully understand." That night, after the twins fell asleep, Ethan again pored over the old photographs. One particularly telling image showed Mary and his father sitting on a garden bench, Richard Hayes's hand resting on Mary's in a way that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. His phone vibrated with another text from Lee. "I found Mary Miller's will. You need to see it immediately." Ethan looked at the monitor in the twins' room where Lily and Grace slept peacefully, entwined as always. How much would their lives change with the discoveries he was about to make? Across the street in the brownstone, a light was still on. Evelyn Hayes kept her silent vigil, watching the Hayes mansion as she had for so many years. In her hands, a sealed envelope held the answers Ethan was seeking so desperately. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow I'll finally reveal all I know about Mary Miller, Jennifer, and the secret Richard Hayes took to his grave. For now, Ethan continued his investigation, each new finding drawing him closer to a truth that would change not only his life, but also the future of the two little twins who had inexplicably, yet so perfectly, become his family. Evelyn Hayes adjusted the collar of her wool coat as she climbed the worn steps of the police station. Her wrinkled hands clutched an old leather bag holding decades' worth of memories, carefully preserved in photographs and letters. The weight of those recollections felt heavier than ever on that winter morning. "May I help you, ma'am?" asked a young officer at the reception desk, noting the elderly woman who looked a bit lost. "I need to speak with Detective Walker," Evelyn replied, her voice firm despite her nerves. "It's about the Hayes twins case." Minutes later, Sarah Walker led Evelyn into her office, noticing how the older woman clutched her bag as though it contained a precious treasure. "I was the one who made the anonymous report," Evelyn began without beating around the bush. "And I should have come sooner, but I needed to be sure." "Sure the girls would be safe?" Walker switched on her recorder, sensing she was about to hear something critical. "Why didn't you come sooner, Miss Hayes? Because I promised Jennifer I'd look after her girls," Evelyn answered, tears beginning to form in her eyes. And sometimes looking after someone means watching from afar, making sure they're truly in good hands. Opening her bag, Evelyn began removing photographs. The first showed a young Jennifer Miller, maybe 16, sitting at a piano in Evelyn's home. Her smile was identical to the occasional smile Lily and Grace displayed. "Jennifer was like a daughter to me," Evelyn continued. "I met Mary when she still worked at the Hayes mansion. We were neighbors, you know. Mary was always reserved about her job, but she cared for Jennifer with so much love, so much devotion." Walker jotted down notes quickly, realizing she was finally filling in the gaps of the case. "When was the last time you saw Jennifer?" 3 days before the accident, Evelyn replied, her voice trembling. She brought the girls over for tea, as she did every week. Lily had learned a new song on the piano. She's just like her mother, that one, music in her soul. Grace was drawing, always so quiet, observing everything. The detective noted how Evelyn spoke of the twins with familiarity, like someone who truly knew them well. "Did you watch them after the accident?" "Every day," Evelyn confessed. "When I found out they had run away from the shelter, I knew. I knew they'd come here. This was where they felt safe, where they had happy memories with their mom." Meanwhile, back at the Hayes mansion, Ethan received another report from investigator Jack Lee. The discoveries about Mary Miller kept accumulating, each more intriguing than the last. "Your father kept an apartment downtown," Lee explained over the phone, registered to a shell company, but payments came from his personal account. Guess who lived there in the 90s? Ethan felt his heart race. Mary. Exactly. And later, Jennifer too. All expenses covered via offshore accounts. Your father was meticulous about keeping it off the official records. At the station, Evelyn continued her story, now showing Walker more photos. "Jennifer was a music teacher. Did you know that? She had a natural talent. The girls inherited it. If you saw them at the piano, detective, it's like Jennifer is there, playing through them." "Why did you decide to report Mr. Hayes when you saw him with the girls?" Walker asked. Evelyn sighed deeply. "Because I needed to be sure. Jennifer always said her girls were special, that they needed extra protection. When I saw this rich man taking them in the middle of the night, well, anyone would be suspicious, right? But now you've changed your mind?" "I've been watching for weeks," Evelyn confirmed. "I've seen how he treats them, how they've blossomed under his care. It's like it was meant to be." Walker paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Miss Hayes, do you know anything about the twins' father's identity?" Evelyn shook her head. Jennifer never spoke about it. It hurt her deeply. Maybe Mary knew, but she took that secret to her grave. At the mansion, Lily and Grace played in the sunroom when they noticed movement in the neighboring house. Lily pointed to the window where Evelyn usually watched. "It's the tea lady," Grace whispered to her sister. "Mama used to take us there." Ethan, who was supervising their play, noticed the girls' interest. "Do you know that lady?" Lily nodded. "She has a piano. She always made chocolate chip cookies." That simple piece of information made Ethan pick up his phone immediately. Within minutes, he was talking to Walker. "The girls remember her," he explained, watching Lily and Grace still gazing toward Evelyn's house. "They say they used to visit her with Jennifer, Mr. Hayes," Walker replied. "Miss Hayes is here with me right now, and I think we all need to have a conversation." Hours later, Evelyn Hayes entered the Hayes mansion for the first time in decades. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her bag, but her eyes shone at the sight of the twins. Lily was the first to fully recognize her. "Miss Evelyn!" she exclaimed, running toward her with a spontaneity that surprised everyone. Grace followed, more cautious but clearly intrigued. "My little musicians?" Evelyn smiled, tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. "You've grown so much." Lisa Rodriguez, who was present to observe professionally, jotted down notes in her clipboard. The twins' reaction to Evelyn was remarkable. They showed recognition, trust, and positive memories. Weekly visits were a constant in their lives, Evelyn explained as everyone settled in the living room. Jennifer believed it was important for the girls to have a routine, people they could rely on. After Mary passed, we became even closer. Ethan watched the interaction, fascinated. "Why didn't you come forward earlier?" "Fear," Evelyn admitted. "When I saw you with them that night, every protective instinct in me went into overdrive. Jennifer always said we had to be extra cautious with the girls. There was something she was afraid of, though she never told me exactly what." Walker, also there, noticed Ethan's reaction to that information. "Mr. Hayes, is there something you'd like to share?" Ethan hesitated, glancing at the twins, who were now enthusiastically showing Evelyn their latest drawings of their mother. "I've been discovering some things about the past, about Mary, her connection to my family." Evelyn looked up, suddenly very interested. "Mary worked here when Jennifer was born. She never talked much about that time, but she always made sure Jennifer had everything she needed. It was like someone was looking out for them from a distance." My father, Ethan, finished gently. Richard Hayes. A heavy silence fell over the room. Evelyn seemed to process this information, her hands gripping her bag even tighter. "He used to visit sometimes," she finally revealed. "Never came in, just watched from his car. Jennifer called him the man in the black car. I didn't know who he really was." Lisa Rodriguez took more notes, observing how the pieces were falling into place. The presence of a familiar figure like Miss Hayes could be extremely beneficial for the twins, she said, especially now, during this transitional period. As if confirming her assessment, Lily walked up to Evelyn with a piece of sheet music. "Can you show us again?" she asked timidly. "The song Mama used to play?" Evelyn looked at Ethan for approval. He nodded, moved by the connection forming before his eyes. In the music room, Evelyn began playing a gentle melody on the piano. Lily and Grace came closer, their green eyes, Jennifer's eyes, Mary's eyes, fixed on the keys. Jennifer played this for them every night, Evelyn explained, her voice thick with emotion. She said it was a special lullaby, passed down from Mary. Ethan watched them, feeling his heart tighten. Somewhere in his memory the melody felt familiar, perhaps something he had heard echoing in the mansion's halls long ago when Mary was still the housekeeper. Walker used the musical interlude to pull Ethan aside. "Has Lee found anything else?" "Lots of documents," Ethan confirmed in a low voice. Regular payments, properties, offshore accounts. My father supported Mary and Jennifer for years, always behind the scenes. And the will? Walker prompted. Lee is decoding the legal details, but there's something about a trust fund set up for Jennifer and her possible descendants. Evelyn, now teaching Lily the correct finger positions on the piano, seemed unaware of the adults' conversation. She was completely focused on the twins, on how Grace watched her sister proudly, on how Lily bit her lip in concentration, just like Jennifer used to do. Jennifer would be so happy, Evelyn remarked later, as they all shared tea in the library. Seeing the girls here, safe, learning music again, it's all she ever wanted for them. Rodriguez made her final notes of the day. Miss Hayes's presence provides a crucial link to the twins' past, offering emotional continuity and positive memories of their mother. Her inclusion in the children's support circle is highly recommended. As the afternoon wore on, Evelyn shared more stories about Jennifer and the twins. She talked about the impromptu recitals in her living room, how Mary would sometimes show up unexpectedly with gifts for her granddaughter, and the Sunday afternoons when Jennifer would bring the girls to bake cookies. Mary never told me much about her time here, Evelyn said, glancing around the library. But she always spoke of this mansion with a special fondness, like it held precious memories. Ethan thought of the documents Lee had uncovered, the photographs of his father with Mary, the secret payments and hidden properties. The more he learned about the past, the more certain he became of a profound connection between the Hayes and Miller families. Mrs. Hayes, he began carefully. Do you know if Mary left any documents, any letters for Jennifer? Evelyn hesitated, her teacup trembling slightly. Jennifer had a memory box. After the accident, I kept some of her things, for the girls, for when they were older. Walker and Rodriguez exchanged telling looks. Any document left by Mary or Jennifer could be crucial in legally establishing the family connection Ethan suspected. At the piano, Lily managed to play the first notes of the lullaby. Grace clapped enthusiastically, and for a moment, their smiles resembled Jennifer's so closely that Evelyn had to hold back tears. Are you sure you want to keep digging? Walker asked Ethan in a low voice. Some truths can be painful. Ethan watched the twins, now entirely at ease with Evelyn, sharing stories and memories of their mother. I need to know, he said, for them, so I can protect them completely. Evelyn tucked her photographs back into her bag, except for one she handed to Ethan. Mary and Jennifer in Evelyn's garden, both smiling for the camera, their green eyes shining in the sunlight. Jennifer always said there was a guardian angel watching over them, Evelyn remarked softly. I think now we know who it was. When Evelyn finally said goodbye, promising to return the next day for more piano lessons, the twins appeared calmer, more connected to their past. Lily and Grace hugged her for a long time, as if afraid she might vanish too. I'll bring chocolate cookies, Evelyn promised, kissing the tops of their heads. And more stories about your mom. Walker walked Evelyn back to her house, asking a few more questions about Jennifer and Mary. Rodriguez finished her report, strongly recommending that Evelyn be included in the twins' routine. Ethan stayed in the mansion, watching the twins practice the notes they had learned on the piano. The old lullaby echoed through the halls, awakening dormant memories of his own childhood. In his office, the phone rang. It was Lee again. I found Mary's will, he announced, and there's something you need to see immediately. Ethan looked at the portrait of his father on the wall, at the photograph of Mary and Jennifer in his hands, and at the twins, still intent on the piano. How many secrets did this mansion still hold? What was the true extent of the Hayes-Miller connection? The snow continued to fall softly outside, covering the city in its white blanket. In the brownstone, Evelyn Hayes finally slept in peace, knowing her little ones were safe. At the precinct, Walker reread her notes, connecting dots and forming theories. And in the Hayes mansion, two small girls played an old lullaby, their fingers finding in the piano keys a path back to their roots, to the music that flowed in their veins, a legacy of love passed from Mary to Jennifer, and now to them. Ethan watched the girls for a few more moments before heading upstairs to his office. Mary's will could contain the answers he sought, but it might also change everything. As he picked up the phone to return Lee's call, the lullaby continued to echo through the mansion, like an invisible thread connecting past and present, secrets and truths, losses and new beginnings. On his desk, the photograph of Mary and Jennifer smiled at him, the same green eyes now shining on Lily and Grace's faces. Whatever the will revealed, one thing was certain: the twins had finally found their way home. It was 3 a.m. when Ethan discovered the irregularity in the paneling behind the bookcase. He was putting back some books he had consulted when he noticed a nearly imperceptible misalignment in the dark oak boards lining the wall. His fingers ran across the polished surface until they found a small protrusion. Heart pounding, he pressed it and heard a soft click. The panel slid open an inch, revealing a hidden safe. "Dad," he muttered, "more secrets." The combination wasn't hard to guess. It was his mother's birth date, something Richard Hayes often used. The safe opened with a metallic groan, revealing neatly stacked documents and a box of photographs. The first image he picked up made his heart stop. It showed his father, very young, maybe in his early 20s, hugging Mary Miller in a garden he didn't recognize. Both smiled in a way Ethan had never seen in any other picture of Richard Hayes. Genuine, carefree, full of life. But it was the documents that truly caught his attention. They were drafts of legal paperwork from the early 90s, all unfinished. One in particular made his hands tremble. Paternity acknowledgement. I, Richard Edward Hayes, in full possession of my mental faculties, hereby recognize as my legitimate daughter, Jennifer Ann Miller. The document was unsigned, a preliminary version never completed. Ethan sank into his father's old leather chair, his mind spinning with the implications of this discovery. Upstairs, Lily and Grace slept peacefully, unaware of the revelations unfolding below. Since Evelyn Hayes had come into their lives, bringing back memories and stories of their mother, the twins seemed more grounded, more at peace. Ethan picked up his phone, ignoring the late hour. "Lee, I need you to do something else for me. It's about a DNA test." The next day, Lisa Rodriguez arrived for her weekly evaluation, finding the twins in the sunroom with Evelyn. Lily practiced piano while Grace drew a scene of domestic life that would have seemed impossible a few weeks earlier. "Their progress is extraordinary," Rodriguez noted, scribbling in her notes. "Lily is speaking more. Grace shows less separation anxiety. They're finally developing individual identities without losing their special bond." Evelyn, supervising Lily's piano practice, smiled proudly. Jennifer would be so happy. The girls are becoming who they were before the accident. It was then that something unexpected happened. Lily stopped playing abruptly, turning to Ethan, who had just entered the room. "Uncle Ethan," she called out naturally, as if she had always called him that. "Come listen to the new song." Time seemed to freeze in the room. Lisa Rodriguez glanced up from her clipboard. Evelyn held her breath. And Ethan. Ethan felt his heart leap. Grace, who had been focused on her drawing, also turned. "Yeah, Uncle Ethan, Lily learned the whole song Mommy used to play." Rodriguez watched the scene carefully, noting how the term uncle had emerged spontaneously, without prompting. In her notes she wrote, "Significant development. The twins appear to be intuitively recognizing deeper family ties." Later that day, Ethan received a discreet envelope from the lab. Locked in his office, his hands trembled as he read the DNA results, comparing samples from him and the twins. The scientific terms and numbers blurred before his eyes, but one line stood out in stark clarity. Probability of avuncular relationship, uncle-nieces. 99.9%. Jennifer really was his sister, his half-sister. The weight of that confirmation hit him like a wave. Memories began snapping into place. The secret payments, the hidden properties, the way his father occasionally asked about that young music teacher with an interest that now made painful sense. "Mr. Hayes?" Evelyn knocked softly on the door. "The girls are asking if you want to join us for lunch." "Evelyn," he called, his voice hoarse, "please come in. We need to talk." The elderly woman entered, immediately noticing Ethan's pallor and the papers strewn across his desk. Her keen eyes took in the old photographs, the legal documents, the lab envelope. "You found out, didn't you?" she asked softly. Ethan looked up, surprised. "You knew, not for sure," Evelyn said, taking a seat. But Jennifer? She had so many Hayes traits, the same reserved smile, the same poised posture. And her eyes. Yes, they were Mary's, but there was something else about them. "Why did my father never—" Ethan began, his voice trailing off. Times were different. Evelyn sighed. Mary understood that. She loved her daughter too much to expose her to a scandal. "And your father?" "Well, he did what he could, in the only way he knew how." Ethan ran his hands over his face, trying to organize his thoughts. "I need to tell Lisa Rodriguez the legal implications for custody." "They're your nieces," Evelyn finished gently. "They always have been." Downstairs, the piano echoed again, Lily practicing the lullaby Jennifer used to play. Grace sang softly along, her childish voice blending with the melody. "How do I tell them?" Ethan asked, more to himself than to Evelyn. "They already know, in some way." Evelyn smiled. "Didn't you hear what they called you today? Children have a wisdom we adults often don't grasp." Rodriguez received the news at her office the next morning. Ethan brought all the documents, the DNA test, the papers from the safe, the old photographs. "This changes the legal landscape significantly," she said, examining them. "A direct family bond, plus all this evidence of your father's intention to acknowledge Jennifer." "I want to pursue permanent custody," Ethan declared, "not just as a legal guardian, but as their uncle." Rodriguez made more notes. "I'll rewrite all the reports in light of these new findings. The emotional stability the girls are showing, along with a proven family connection." "There's one more thing," Ethan interrupted, pulling another document from his folder. "I want to officially register Lily and Grace as Hayes Millers. My father intended to do it for Jennifer. The least I can do now is finish what he started." The news spread quickly among the small circle involved in the case. Walker received the documents at her desk in the precinct, a satisfied smile crossing her face as the pieces finally fell into place. Evelyn cried when Ethan showed her the DNA results, not in surprise, but in relief. Jennifer always felt there was something special about her origins, she said. But the most important thing to her was protecting the girls, giving them a normal life. The twins themselves seemed to accept the news with a child's peculiar wisdom. When Ethan finally sat down with them to explain in simple, age-appropriate terms about their relationship, Lily only smiled. "We already knew you were family," Grace stated with childlike simplicity. "Just like Aunt Evelyn." "But how did you know?" Ethan asked, genuinely curious. Lily, still playing with the piano keys, answered without looking up. "Because sometimes you have sad eyes, like Mommy did." That observation hit Ethan deeply. How many times must Jennifer have looked in the mirror, seeing features she didn't fully understand, bearing questions she never dared ask? The legal process moved surprisingly fast, bolstered by Rodriguez's positive reports and the substantial documentary evidence. The judge handling the case was especially interested in the family story after examining the old photos and the documents found in the safe. "It's as though Richard Hayes was preparing the groundwork," the judge remarked during a preliminary hearing. "All these documents, though never finalized, clearly show intent to acknowledge." Ethan wrestled with his own demons as the process advanced. Late at night, after the girls had fallen asleep, he would spend hours in his father's office, rereading old letters, examining photographs, trying to understand the choices Richard Hayes had made. He loved Mary, Evelyn told him one evening, finding him lost in thought. And he loved Jennifer, too, in his own way. Sometimes love has to hide to protect the ones we cherish. Weeks turned into months. The Hayes mansion gained new life through the twins' laughter, Evelyn's piano lessons, and the regular visits from Walker and Rodriguez, who were now more like friends than supervisors. Lily and Grace blossomed visibly. The trauma of losing Jennifer was still there, of course, but now it coexisted with happy new memories in the making, a family strengthening, roots growing deeper. "They're as much Hayeses as they are Millers," Ethan commented one afternoon, watching the twins play in the garden. "Maybe that's why they adapted so naturally here. Blood recognizes blood." Rodriguez, conducting her final official evaluation, smiled. "It's not just blood, Ethan. It's love. The same love Mary had for Jennifer, Jennifer had for her daughters, and you now have for your nieces." On the day permanent custody was officially granted, the Hayes mansion hosted a small celebration. Evelyn baked her famous chocolate cookies, Walker brought balloons, and Rodriguez arrived with a cake decorated with musical notes. In a quiet moment during the party, Ethan found one particular old photograph of Mary and his father. They were both young, smiling in a distant garden where it all began. Next to it was a recent image of the twins in the same spot, free of secrets and sadness. "We did it, Dad," he murmured to the photo. "We finally did the right thing." "Uncle Ethan," Lily's voice called from the music room. "Come see, Grace learned a new song." Ethan smiled, putting the photo away. The past had its secrets and sorrows, but the present was brimming with possibilities. Lily and Grace weren't just his nieces by blood. They were his nieces by choice, by love, by fate. As he walked toward the music room, where Grace proudly tapped out a new melody on the piano, and Lily cheered her on, Ethan felt a peace he hadn't known since finding the twins on that snowy night. The Hayes mansion, which for so long held secrets and shadows, now echoed with music and laughter. Mary and Jennifer, wherever they were, surely smiled. And Richard Hayes. Perhaps he finally found rest, knowing his son had finished what he couldn't do in life. Evelyn watched it all with wise, tired eyes, her heart at peace for keeping her promise to Jennifer. The girls were safe, loved, and most importantly, home. Exactly where they were always meant to be. Snow began to fall outside, just like on that first night when Ethan found the twins. But now, instead of fear and uncertainty, there was only the calm certainty that some stories, no matter how long they take, eventually find their way to a happy ending. Lily finished her music with a dramatic flourish, making everyone laugh. Grace ran to hug her sister, and Ethan felt tears prick his eyes, tears of joy, responsibility, and love. "Come here," he said, opening his arms. The twins ran into his embrace, and for a moment everything was perfectly right with the world. They were Hayeses, they were Millers, they were simply and completely family. And as the snow continued falling outside, enveloping the city in a white blanket, the Hayes mansion housed not only a reunited family, but also living proof that some secrets, when finally revealed, can heal old wounds and create new beginnings. Lisa Rodriguez adjusted her glasses as she finished her final report on the Hayes-Miller case. Her hands hovered over the keyboard for a moment as she chose her final words. After a year of intensive observation and regular follow-ups, there is no doubt that granting permanent custody to Mr. Ethan Hayes was not only appropriate, but providential. Lily and Grace Hayes Miller exhibit exceptional development in all aspects: emotional, social, and academic. The family bond, established and strengthened by the discovery of their true relationship, has created an environment of growth and healing that surpasses all professional expectations. She paused, a soft smile on her lips as she recalled the transformation she had witnessed over the past year. She continued typing. The Hayes mansion, once a symbol of family secrets and suppressed pain, has become a true home where the legacy of Jennifer Miller and Mary Miller is honored and celebrated daily. The constant presence of Ms. Evelyn Hayes as a grandmother figure and vital link to the girls' past has been instrumental in their healing and adjustment. The sound of childish laughter drifted through her open window. The twins were arriving for the celebration of their 6th birthday, which coincided with the official finalization of the adoption process. The Hayes mansion was unrecognizable. Colorful balloons danced in the summer breeze, ribbons spiraled around the columns at the entrance, and a huge banner declared, "Happy birthday, Lily and Grace. Welcome officially to the Hayes family." Evelyn had arrived early, overseeing the last details of the decoration with the same dedication she gave to everything involving the twins. Her wrinkled hand carefully arranged photographs in the new memory room, a special space Ethan had created to preserve the history of both the Millers and the Hayeses. "Perfect," she murmured, adjusting a photo of Jennifer at the piano with Mary at her side. Next to it was a recent picture of Lily in the same position, Grace beside her, their smiles identical to their mother's. Ethan watched the preparations from his office, where he was finalizing the last documents for the Jennifer and Mary Miller Foundation. The organization, established with part of his personal inheritance, aimed to help families in similar situations. Orphans with unknown relatives, families split by circumstances beyond their control. "Uncle Ethan," Lily's voice called from the yard. "Come see what we found." He smiled, putting the papers away. It still amazed him how natural the title Uncle felt now, as if it had always been his destiny to fill that role in the girls' lives. In the garden, Lily and Grace had discovered an old swing set hidden among the century-old trees. Ethan recognized it immediately. It was the same swing set from some of the old photos, where a young Mary pushed a small Jennifer. "Can we fix it?" Grace asked, her green eyes, the eyes of the Millers, the eyes of the Hayeses, shining with anticipation. "Of course," he answered, examining the worn ropes. "We'll make it a family project." Every time he said family, his heart filled to the brim. In the span of a year, the mansion had gone from a formal, rather cold place to a genuine home. The once silent corridors now rang with music and laughter. The sunroom had become a music room where Evelyn supervised daily piano practice. The memory room was especially significant. Ethan had personally overseen its layout, creating a visual timeline that began with the earliest photos of Mary at the mansion, moved through Jennifer's life, and culminated in the present with the twins. It was a living testament to how love, even forced into the shadows by the norms of its time, found ways to survive and bloom across generations. "The guests of honor are here," Walker's voice announced from the garden's entrance. The detective, now a close family friend, carried a huge gift box. Lily and Grace ran to hug her, their matching dresses fluttering in the breeze. A year ago, they could barely make eye contact with strangers. Now their unique personalities sparkled. Lily, the born musician, always ready to perform. Grace, the keen observer, capturing the world in her ever more elaborate drawings. Rodriguez arrived soon after, carrying her final report in an elegant folder. "Where's the man of the hour?" she asked, scanning for Ethan. "Here," he replied, emerging from the garden with leaves in his hair, a side effect of checking out the old swing. The adoption ceremony would be simple, just a legal formality to confirm what everyone already knew in their hearts. But Ethan had insisted on celebrating properly, making it a memorable birthday party for the twins. Evelyn led everyone to the memory room before the official festivities began. It was a tradition she had established. Some quiet moments of reflection and gratitude before every family celebration. Jennifer would be so proud, she said, her voice quivering with emotion. And Mary. Well, Mary always knew this day would come, somehow. The walls of the room told the story silently. Photographs, letters, newspaper clippings, all carefully preserved and displayed. In a special corner rested the old, unfinished DNA test from Richard Hayes, side by side with the new one that finally confirmed what he never could. "This is only the beginning," Ethan murmured, watching the twins explore the memories with a sense of familial reverence. The Jennifer and Mary Foundation starts operations next month. We'll help other families reconnect, heal old wounds. Rodriguez smiled, recalling her initial caution about the case. "You know, in all my years of social work, I've never seen a story like this. It's as if every puzzle piece was waiting for the right moment to click into place." The subsequent party was a celebration of life, love, and family in the truest sense. Lily and Grace blew out their birthday candles, decorated with musical notes and paintbrushes representing their individual passions. Evelyn served her now essential chocolate cookies. While the guests were celebrating, Ethan found himself drifting back to the memory room. His eyes fell on a particular photo: Mary and Richard, young and smiling in that distant garden. Next to it was a recent shot of the twins in the same spot, their smiles free of secrets or sadness. "We did it, Dad," he murmured to the photograph. "We finally made it right." Evelyn found him there, her wise eyes understanding the moment without words. "You know," she said softly, "Jennifer used to say there were angels watching over her girls. I think she was right. She just didn't know the angels were their own family, waiting to be revealed." From the garden, Lily's voice called out, "Uncle Ethan! Aunt Evelyn! Come on, Grace wants to show everyone her new drawings." The afternoon passed in a peaceful celebration of family and friendship. Walker shared stories from her years as a detective, continually returning to how this case had touched her heart in a unique way. Rodriguez, relaxed and smiling, felt far removed from the formal social worker who first stepped through the mansion's doors. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in pink and gold, the twins asked to play something on the piano. It was the old lullaby again, the one Jennifer had taught them, that Mary had passed down, and that now lived on in another generation. Ethan watched his nieces at the piano, their little fingers dancing over the keys with growing confidence. Evelyn discreetly wiped away a tear, and even Walker and Rodriguez seemed moved by the performance. The music resonated through the Hayes mansion, no longer a lament for the past, but a celebration of the present and a promise for the future. The walls that once held so many secrets now embraced a healed, united family. To Jennifer and Mary, Ethan silently toasted with his glass when the music ended. To family, Evelyn added softly. Lily and Grace ran to hug their uncle, their laughter mingling with the piano's last echoing note. And in that moment, in the Hayes-Miller mansion, there were no more secrets, no more pain, only love, only family, only the sweet dawn of a new chapter in their lives. Rodriguez wrapped up her final report with one last note. The Hayes-Miller case reminds us that family isn't just about blood or legal papers. It's about love, acceptance, and the courage to confront the past to build a better future. Lily and Grace have found not just a home, but their true place in the world, exactly where they were always meant to be. And so, as night gently fell over the mansion, a family celebrated not just a birthday or an official adoption, but the triumph of love over the shadows of the past, the victory of truth over secrets, and the miraculous way in which hearts, even separated by circumstances and time, can finally find their way home.